Teacher spends her salary on school supplies for poor students, unaware a parent was a billionaire. The thought replayed in Elena Barrett's mind as she counted out the cash at the register, her worn leather wallet significantly lighter than it had been that morning. Outside, rain pelted the windows of the discount store, matching the rhythm of her racing heart. 27 notebooks, 38 pencil packs, 15 sets of colored markers, and a dozen backpacks. It wasn't enough, it was never enough, but it was all she could afford this month. "You must have a lot of kids," the cashier remarked with a smile, scanning the final item. Elena returned the smile, though it didn't quite reach her tired eyes. 32? All of them amazing. The cashier's eyebrows shot up. "Wow, and I thought my sister with 4 was overwhelmed." "They're my students," Elena clarified, gathering her purchases into 4 oversized bags. "4th grade at Westbrook Elementary." Understanding dawned on the cashier's face, followed by something Elena had grown accustomed to seeing, a mixture of admiration and pity. "The school doesn't provide supplies?" Elena shrugged, her shoulders tight with a familiar tension. "Budget cuts. Some families can't afford the basics." She didn't mention how the school's supply closet had been nearly empty for months, or how she'd watched Miguel use the same pencil stub for 2 weeks, sharpening it carefully each morning until it was barely big enough to hold. "That's very kind of you," the cashier said, handing over the receipt. Kind wasn't the word Elena would have chosen. Necessary, perhaps, or simply human. She nodded her thanks and pushed through the automatic doors into the rain, balancing the bags as she made her way to her 12-year-old Honda Civic. The driver's side door still stuck from the minor accident she couldn't afford to fix last winter. The rain intensified as Elena drove through the quiet streets of Millfield, a once prosperous town now weathering economic decline after the paper mill closure 6 years ago. Half the storefronts downtown stood empty, their windows papered over with faded "For Lease" signs. She passed the community center where she volunteered twice weekly, teaching adult literacy classes without pay. The recreation center next door had closed last spring, another casualty of the town's shrinking tax base. Elena's apartment occupied the 2nd floor of a converted Victorian home, its grandeur long faded into peeling paint and creaking floors. She parked in her usual spot beneath the massive oak tree, whose branches offered meager protection from the downpour, as she hurried up the external wooden staircase, plastic bags cutting into her fingers. Inside, the apartment welcomed her with familiar silence. Elena set the bags on her small kitchen table, next to the stack of ungraded papers and the framed photograph of her parents. They had both been teachers too, her legacy, one she carried with reverent determination despite their absence. Heart attack for her father during her sophomore year of college, breast cancer for her mother just 3 years ago. Elena made herself a cup of tea and sat at the table, organizing supplies into piles for each child who needed them. Maya would get the purple backpack. Purple was her favorite color, though she rarely spoke this preference aloud. Elena had noticed how the girl's eyes lingered on anything purple, how her small fingers traced the violet illustrations in the class picture books. Maya Santiago had transferred to Westbrook Elementary 3 months ago, arriving mid-year with a worn backpack and eyes that held both wariness and wonder. Her father, Mr. Santiago, had enrolled her with minimal paperwork and explanations. Single parent, recent move to town, previous school records forthcoming. Elena had noticed his worn work boots and calloused hands during their brief meeting, the careful way he spoke, as though measuring each word before releasing it. Maya rarely volunteered answers in class, but wrote stories of breathtaking imagination in her journal, tales of faraway kingdoms and brave children who discovered hidden strengths. Elena recognized in her the quiet resilience of a child who had weathered changes beyond her control. Tomorrow, Elena would distribute the supplies casually, a backpack here, a notebook there, with the practiced discretion of someone who understood that pride was sometimes the only possession some families could truly claim as their own. The kitchen clock read 9:42 p.m. when Elena finally finished sorting supplies and grading papers. Her eyes burned with fatigue as she calculated her remaining budget for the month. The math was unforgiving. Rent, utilities, car insurance, groceries, student loan payment. After the school supplies, she had exactly $143 to last another 18 days. She would make it work. She always did. Morning arrived with pale sunlight and the distant promise of spring. Elena dressed carefully in one of her 5 teaching outfits, a navy skirt and cream blouse she'd found at the secondhand store, paired with sensible flats repaired twice with superglue at the seams. She loaded the supplies into her trunk, mentally rehearsing how she would discreetly distribute them throughout the day. Westbrook Elementary stood 3 stories tall, red brick worn smooth by decades of weather and children's hands. Built in 1962, it retained a certain dignity despite the outdated facilities and overcrowded classrooms. Elena arrived at 7:15 a.m., as she did every morning, unlocking her classroom and preparing for the day ahead. The first bell rang at 8:30, and the hallways filled with the controlled chaos of children starting their day. Elena stood at her classroom door, greeting each student by name, noting Miguel's frayed shirt collar, Zoe's unwashed hair, and the dark circles under Jason's eyes that suggested another restless night in his household. And then there was Maya, arriving exactly 7 minutes before the final bell, as she always did. Her dark hair was neatly braided, her clothes clean but noticeably worn. She carried her old backpack with both arms wrapped around it, like something precious. "Good morning, Maya," Elena said warmly. "Good morning, Ms. Barrett," Maya replied, her voice soft but clear. "I found something in the supply closet that I think you might like," Elena continued, keeping her tone casual as she led Maya to her desk, where the new purple backpack waited. "This has been sitting there unused, and I remembered how carefully you take care of your things." Maya's eyes widened, her fingers hovering over the backpack as though it might disappear if touched too quickly. "It's purple," she whispered. "Is that okay?" Elena asked. Maya nodded, her small face solemn with unexpected joy. "Purple is my favorite color." "I thought it might be." Elena smiled. "There are some notebooks and pencils inside too, just extras we had." The lie was gentle, necessary. Maya carefully transferred her few possessions from the old backpack to the new one, handling each item with deliberate care. When she finished, she looked up at Elena with eyes that held something new. Trust, perhaps, or the first fragile seedling of hope. "Thank you, Ms. Barrett," she said. "You're very welcome, Maya." Throughout the day, Elena distributed the remaining supplies with similar care, a casual comment about extra materials, a discovery of forgotten items in the supply closet. By lunch, every child in her class had what they needed, their desks newly organized with tools for learning that many had gone without for months. The afternoon reading circle found Elena seated in her rocking chair, a group of students cross-legged on the carpet before her. She read from The Secret Garden, watching their faces as they traveled to the moors of England, experiencing the transformation of a neglected garden and the children who found healing within its walls. "If you look the right way," Elena read, "you can see that the whole world is a garden." Maya's eyes never left Elena's face, absorbing every word as though storing them away for later examination. When the bell rang at 3:15, signaling the end of the day, the girl lingered, reluctant to leave. "Did you enjoy the story?" Elena asked, organizing papers at her desk. Maya nodded. "I like how Mary changed. She was mean at first because no one loved her, but then she found the garden and it made her better." Elena smiled, struck by the child's insight. "That's very perceptive, Maya. Sometimes we all need to find our garden, the place or people who help us grow." "Do you have a garden, Ms. Barrett?" Maya asked, her head tilted slightly. The question caught Elena by surprise. "I suppose this classroom is my garden," she answered after a moment. "And all of you are the flowers I get to help grow." Maya seemed to consider this seriously. "Then you're like Dickon. He knew how to make things live." The comparison to the nurturing character brought unexpected warmth to Elena's chest. Before she could respond, a knock at the door drew their attention. Gabriel Santiago stood in the doorway, his tall frame slightly stooped as though accustomed to making himself smaller for low ceilings. Despite his worn jeans and simple button-down shirt, there was something in his posture that suggested hidden strength. His dark eyes, so like his daughter's, moved from Maya to Elena with careful assessment. "Papa!" Maya's face brightened. "Ms. Barrett gave me a purple backpack." Gabriel's expression shifted subtly, concern, question, pride, before settling into a careful smile. "That's wonderful, Mija. Why don't you wait in the hallway for a moment while I speak with your teacher?" Maya nodded, slipping her arms through the straps of her new backpack before leaving the room. Silence expanded between them for a moment before Gabriel spoke. "Ms. Barrett, I appreciate your kindness toward Maya, but I need to make something clear." Elena had heard variations of this conversation before, the pride of parents who wanted to provide for their children themselves, even when circumstances made it impossible. She prepared herself for polite insistence that the backpack be returned. "We don't need charity," Gabriel continued, his voice low and measured. "I can provide for my daughter." Elena met his gaze directly. "Mr. Santiago, it wasn't charity. The school had extra supplies that needed to be distributed. Maya received no more or less than any other student who needed materials." The lie felt heavier this time, but Elena maintained her composure. Something in Gabriel's expression suggested he didn't fully believe her, but he nodded slowly. "Maya speaks very highly of you," he said after a moment. "She hasn't connected with a teacher like this since—" He paused, recalibrating. "For a long time. She's a remarkable child," Elena replied. Thoughtful, observant, with an extraordinary imagination, her writing shows exceptional promise. Pride softened Gabriel's features momentarily. "Her mother was a writer," he said quietly, then seemed to regret the personal disclosure. He straightened, professional distance returning. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Barrett." As he turned to leave, Elena noticed a small tear in the shoulder seam of his shirt, the kind that happened when fabric wore thin from use. The observation confirmed her assumptions about the Santiago family's circumstances, making her glad she'd chosen Maya for the purple backpack. The following weeks brought the tentative arrival of spring to Millfield. Tree buds swelled, promising leaves to come, and occasional sunshine warmed the playground during recess. Elena continued her careful observation of her students, noting with satisfaction how Maya grew more confident, raising her hand to answer questions and even making a friend in Zoe, a quietly artistic girl who shared Maya's love of stories. It was during the spring parent-teacher conferences that Elena next encountered Gabriel Santiago. He arrived precisely on time for his 5:45 p.m. appointment, entering her classroom with the same contained energy she remembered. Maya waited in the library with the other children whose parents were in conferences. "Mr. Santiago, thank you for coming." Elena gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I'm pleased to have this opportunity to discuss Maya's progress." Gabriel sat with the careful posture of someone accustomed to more formal settings, his hands resting lightly on his knees. Up close, Elena noticed the quality of his watch, incongruously expensive against his otherwise modest appearance, and wondered if it was a treasured gift or family heirloom. "Maya has shown remarkable improvement since joining us," Elena began, opening the folder containing samples of the girl's work. "Her reading comprehension is well above grade level, and her writing shows exceptional creativity and emotional depth." She handed Gabriel several of Maya's stories and watched as he read them, his expression softening with each page he turned. When he looked up, the professional mask had slipped, revealing something vulnerable and genuine. "These are amazing," he said quietly. "They are," Elena agreed. "Maya has a rare gift for capturing human emotion through her characters. I've encouraged her to enter the district writing competition next month." Gabriel nodded, still looking at his daughter's words. Her mother would have been so proud. The statement emerged as though unplanned, hanging in the air between them. "Maya mentioned her mother was a writer," Elena said gently. Gabriel's fingers tightened slightly on the papers. "Isabel wrote children's books. Nothing published. She was still working toward that when—" He cleared his throat. "She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer." The simple statement carried the weight of an entire collapsed world. Elena felt it press against her chest, familiar and devastating. "I'm very sorry," she said, the words inadequate but sincere. "I lost my mother to cancer as well 3 years ago." Gabriel looked up, recognition passing between them, the silent understanding of those who have watched illness consume someone they love. "Maya was 7, he continued after a moment. "We lived in Boston then. After Isabel died, I couldn't. Everything there reminded us of her. So we moved, first to Chicago, then here. That explains Maya's journal entries about snow and tall buildings," Elena noted. "She writes about missing a view from high windows." Gabriel's expression changed, surprise replacing grief. "She remembers our apartment in Boston. We lived on the 23rd floor. She used to sit by the window for hours, making up stories about the people she saw below." The conference continued, shifting to discussions of Maya's academic strengths and areas for growth. Elena explained the upcoming science project and field trip to the Natural History Museum in the neighboring city. As they concluded, Gabriel hesitated before standing. "The purple backpack," he said. "It wasn't extra school supplies, was it?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "Maya deserved a purple backpack." Something shifted in Gabriel's expression. Not anger, but a complex emotion Elena couldn't quite identify. He nodded once, a gesture that seemed to acknowledge more than her words alone. "Thank you for seeing her," he said finally. "Really seeing her." After he left, Elena sat quietly at her desk, thinking about the Santiago family, a grieving father and daughter rebuilding their lives in a strange town, carrying invisible wounds alongside visible financial constraints. She thought of her own grief, how it had shaped her choices and led her to this classroom, to these children who needed more than academic instruction. The following Monday brought unexpected news. Principal Fenton called an emergency faculty meeting before school to announce budget cuts even more severe than anticipated. The district would eliminate all funding for the fourth-grade field trip to the museum, along with several planned curriculum enhancements. "I'm sorry," Fenton concluded, his face drawn with genuine regret. "I fought this as hard as I could, but the district's finances are worse than projected. We'll need to inform the students and parents immediately." Elena felt a familiar weight settle in her stomach. She had promised her students this trip for months, building lessons around the planned experience. For many, it would be their first visit to a museum of any kind. Maya had written an entire story about dinosaurs coming to life at night, inspired by their upcoming visit. By lunchtime, Elena had made her decision. She would pay for the bus herself, approximately $650 for the charter, and cover the museum's group entrance fee of $320. She had been saving for a much-needed replacement of her failing water heater, but the disappointment on her students' faces would cost far more than money could measure. She made the arrangements that afternoon, emptying most of her modest savings account without allowing herself to reconsider. When she announced to her class that the field trip would proceed as planned, their cheers filled the classroom with a joy that temporarily pushed aside her anxiety about the coming month's expenses. That evening, working late in her classroom, Elena didn't hear the footsteps approaching her door. When she looked up from grading papers, Gabriel Santiago stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Santiago," she said, surprised. "Is everything all right with Maya?" "Maya is fine," he replied, stepping into the room. "She's with our neighbor, Mrs. Winters. I came to speak with you." Elena gestured to the chair beside her desk, setting aside her red pen. "How can I help you?" Gabriel remained standing, his posture suggesting internal tension. "Maya told me about the field trip being canceled and then uncanceled. She was very specific about the conversation she overheard between you and the principal after school." Elena felt a flicker of apprehension. She hadn't realized any students had overheard that discussion. "The school administration found a way to make the trip possible after all," she said carefully. "No," Gabriel said, his voice quiet but firm. "You're paying for it yourself." Maya heard everything, how the district cut funding, how you told Principal Fenton you would cover the costs personally. The direct confrontation left no room for evasion. Elena sighed, suddenly aware of how tired she felt. The students have been looking forward to this trip all semester. The museum experience is irreplaceable, especially for children who may never have another opportunity to visit. "Like Maya?" There was no accusation in his tone, only a careful question. "Like many of my students," Elena clarified. "Education isn't just about textbooks and tests. It's about opening doors to new experiences, showing children possibilities they might never otherwise see." Gabriel was quiet for a moment, studying her with an intensity that made Elena slightly uncomfortable. "You bought the supplies too, didn't you?" "Not just Maya's backpack, all of them. The notebooks I've seen the other children carrying, the new pencils, the markers." Elena didn't answer immediately, unused to having her private acts of support exposed so directly. "Teaching requires certain sacrifices," she said finally. "May I sit down?" Gabriel asked, his tone shifting. Elena nodded, and he took the chair across from her, leaning forward with his forearms resting on his knees. "Ms. Barrett, Elena, if I may, what you're doing goes far beyond professional responsibility. He paused, searching for words. "It's extraordinary, but it's also unsustainable." The gentle criticism, though accurate, sparked a flare of defensiveness. "With all due respect, Mr. Santiago, how I manage my classroom and support my students is my decision." "Gabriel, please," he corrected. "And I'm not questioning your dedication or methods. I'm concerned about the personal cost to you." The statement, delivered with unexpected perception, caught Elena off guard. Few people in her life had expressed concern about her well-being, rather than praising her sacrifices. "I manage," she said simply. Gabriel's expression suggested he understood more than she had revealed. At what cost? The question hung between them, uncomfortably precise. Before Elena could formulate a response that preserved her dignity while acknowledging reality, Gabriel continued. "I'd like to fund the field trip," he said, "anonymously, through the school, and establish a classroom supply fund for your students." Elena stared at him, processing the offer. "That's very generous, but I couldn't accept." "It's not charity," Gabriel interrupted, using her own earlier explanation about Maya's backpack. "It's investment in education, in children who deserve every opportunity, regardless of circumstance." Something in his tone made Elena study him more carefully. The contrast between his worn clothing and confident manner, the expensive watch against otherwise modest presentation, the careful way he measured his words, none of it quite aligned. "Why?" she asked simply. Gabriel's expression shifted, revealing a complexity that hadn't been visible before. "Because I recognize what you're doing, the cost you're willing to pay personally to make a difference in these children's lives." He hesitated, then added, "And because my daughter comes home now talking about her future, something she stopped doing after her mother died." The raw honesty in his voice touched something in Elena, creating a moment of connection that transcended their formal teacher-parent relationship. Still, she hesitated. "I appreciate the offer, but I've already arranged to cover the trip." Gabriel nodded, unsurprised by her resistance. "Then consider allowing me to establish the supply fund for next year. No strings attached, completely anonymous if you prefer." His persistence suggested resources beyond what his appearance indicated. Elena found herself wondering again about Gabriel Santiago, what he did for work, why he lived so modestly if he could afford such generosity, what circumstances had brought him and Maya to Millfield of all places. "I'll think about it," she conceded finally. Gabriel stood, apparently satisfied with this small victory. "That's all I ask." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, placing it on her desk. "My personal number? In case you decide to accept." After he left, Elena picked up the card. It contained only his name and a phone number. No company logo, no professional title. The paper was expensive, the print elegantly minimal. Another piece of the puzzle that was Gabriel Santiago, one that fit no clearer than the others. The field trip to the Natural History Museum took place on a perfect spring day in early May. The chartered bus, paid for with Elena's savings despite Gabriel's offer, carried 30 excited fourth graders and 6 parent chaperones through the countryside toward the city 2 hours away. Elena had carefully organized the students into small groups, each assigned to a parent volunteer with specific exhibits to visit and questions to answer. Maya sat beside Zoe, the two girls whispering and giggling as the bus traveled along the highway. Elena, moving through the aisle to check on her students, paused beside them. "Are you excited about the dinosaurs, Maya?" she asked. Maya nodded enthusiastically. "I want to see if they look like I imagined in my story. And I want to see the gems and crystals," Zoe added. "My mom says some of them glow in special light." Elena smiled at their enthusiasm. "Make sure you both complete your observation journals. Remember, you're not just visitors today, you're scientists exploring evidence of the past." The museum exceeded even Elena's expectations. Recently renovated, it featured interactive exhibits that captivated the children's attention far more effectively than any textbook could. She watched with satisfaction as her students pressed buttons to hear dinosaur roars, examined real fossils under magnifying glasses, and stood in awe before the massive Tyrannosaurus skeleton dominating the main hall. Maya moved through the exhibits with particular intensity, her observation journal quickly filling with detailed notes and sketches. During their lunch break in the museum cafeteria, she showed Elena a remarkably accurate drawing of a Triceratops skull. "This is exceptional, Maya," Elena said, genuinely impressed. "You've captured details I didn't even notice." Maya beamed at the praise. "My mom taught me to look for the small things. She said that's where the real story hides." The mention of Isabel Santiago, rare from the typically reserved child, felt like a precious gift. "Your mom sounds very wise," Elena replied. "She was," Maya said simply, returning to her sandwich. The day continued smoothly until mid-afternoon, when Jason Mitchell, a typically well-behaved student from one of the most financially struggling families in the class, disappeared from his group. 30 minutes of increasingly panicked searching by chaperones and museum security found him in the gift shop, tearfully clutching a small dinosaur model he couldn't afford. Elena gently led the embarrassed boy away from curious onlookers, speaking to him privately in a quiet corner. "I just wanted something to remember," Jason whispered, his fingers still wrapped around the $12.99 plastic stegosaurus. "Everyone else gets souvenirs when they go places." The simple statement revealed volumes about Jason's awareness of his family's limitations compared to his peers. Elena felt the familiar ache that came with confronting inequities she couldn't fully address. "I understand," she said softly, "but taking something without paying isn't the right choice, even when we really want it." Jason nodded miserably, relinquishing the dinosaur to her hand. "I know. I'm sorry." Elena made a quick decision. "Wait here for a moment." She returned to the gift shop, purchasing the Stegosaurus along with 31 other small dinosaur models of various types, one for each student and a spare. The total came to $415.87, charged to her nearly maxed-out credit card without hesitation. When the class reassembled for departure, Elena announced that the museum had provided a special educational gift for each student. She distributed the dinosaurs, watching faces light up with unexpected joy. Jason received his Stegosaurus with wide eyes and whispered thanks that only Elena could hear. The bus ride home found most students examining their dinosaurs, comparing species and creating impromptu stories about prehistoric adventures. Elena sat alone in the front seat, mentally calculating how she would manage her finances after this additional expense. The creative accounting required would be challenging but necessary. As the bus pulled into Westbrook Elementary's parking lot at 5:30 p.m., Elena noticed Gabriel Santiago waiting beside a modest gray sedan. He stood apart from the other parents, hands in his pockets, watching the bus with an expression that softened when Maya descended the steps, clutching her dinosaur model and observation journal. Elena supervised the departures of all students, checking each off her list as they joined their waiting families. By the time Maya reached her father, Elena was close enough to overhear their conversation. "Papa, look!" Maya held up her small Triceratops figure. "Ms. Barrett said the museum gave everyone a dinosaur to continue our learning at home." Gabriel's eyes moved from the dinosaur to Elena, understanding immediately what had actually occurred. His expression contained a mixture of gratitude and something else. Concern, perhaps, or a question he couldn't ask in front of his daughter. "That was very educational of them," he replied to Maya, gently touching the plastic horns of the miniature dinosaur. "Did you have a good time?" "It was the best day ever," Maya declared with rare exuberance. "I filled my whole journal and learned about extinction and adaptation and fossil formation and—" "Why don't you tell me all about it on the way home?" Gabriel suggested, guiding her toward their car. As Maya climbed in, he turned back to Elena. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For everything." The simple acknowledgement carried unexpected weight. Elena nodded, suddenly too tired for words, and watched as they drove away. That evening, alone in her apartment, Elena spread her bills across the kitchen table and faced reality. Between the field trip, the dinosaur souvenirs, and the ongoing classroom supplies she provided, her finances had reached a breaking point. She would need to make some difficult choices in the coming month, perhaps canceling her internet service temporarily and using the library's free Wi-Fi, or selling some of her mother's jewelry that she'd been preserving as a last resort. As she contemplated these options, her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. The dinosaurs were a thoughtful touch. "The offer still stands. No strings, no recognition required. Just support for what matters. -G." Elena stared at the message, recognizing Gabriel's initials and remembering the business card he had given her. The timing seemed almost uncanny, as though he had somehow sensed her financial dilemma reaching critical mass. She set the phone aside without responding, uncomfortable with accepting help despite offering it so readily to others. The following morning brought an unexpected development. Principal Fenton called Elena to his office before classes began, his expression uncharacteristically animated. "Elena, you won't believe this," he began once she was seated. "An anonymous donor has established a substantial fund specifically for your classroom. It's designated for supplies, field trips, and educational enhancements for your students." Elena felt her chest tighten with the certainty of who had done this. "How substantial?" she asked carefully. $50,000. Fenton replied, watching her face with evident satisfaction. "Renewable annually for at least 3 years. The donor specifically requested that the funds be at your discretion, with minimal administrative oversight." The amount was staggering, far more than Elena had anticipated even after Gabriel's offer. It represented not just covering basic needs, but creating true educational opportunities for her students. "Did the donor leave any information?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Completely anonymous," Fenton confirmed. "The law firm handling the transaction wouldn't provide any details, but whoever it is clearly believes in your teaching methods." He leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. "Between us, I suspect it might be a former student who's done well for themselves. You've touched many lives over the years, Elena." She nodded, not correcting his assumption. "What's the process for accessing the funds?" "You'll submit requests directly to me, and as long as they're education-related, they'll be approved." The donor was very clear about minimizing bureaucracy. Fenton smiled broadly. "Think of what you can do with this, Elena. Science equipment, literature sets, perhaps even technology upgrades for your classroom." The possibilities expanded in Elena's mind. Not luxuries, but essential tools that would open doors for children with limited resources. Still, something about accepting the gift felt complicated in ways she couldn't fully articulate. "This is unexpected," she said finally. "It's well-deserved recognition of your dedication," Fenton replied. "No one at Westbrook goes above and beyond like you do, Elena. Everyone knows it." As she left his office, Elena felt conflicting emotions churning beneath her professional composure. Relief at the financial pressure lifting, gratitude for the opportunities this would create for her students, but also discomfort at being the recipient of such generosity when she had always been the provider. In her classroom, preparing for the day's lessons, Elena finally allowed herself to acknowledge what troubled her most about Gabriel's gift. It created an imbalance in what had been a relationship of equals. Despite their different circumstances, she and Gabriel had connected as two people committed to Maya's well-being, each making sacrifices in their own way. Now, his ability to solve problems with money, something she could never reciprocate, shifted that balance in ways that made her uncomfortable. At lunch recess, Elena took out her phone and composed a text to the number Gabriel had used. "We need to talk about the donation. After school today?" The response came almost immediately. "I'll be there at 4:30. The afternoon passed in a blur of lessons and activities. Elena found herself watching Maya more closely than usual, noting the girl's growing confidence and the way she now participated voluntarily in class discussions. Whatever her feelings about Gabriel's donation, there was no denying that his daughter was flourishing under Elena's guidance, perhaps justification enough for his generosity. At 4:35, Gabriel arrived at her classroom door. He wore a navy button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, slightly more polished than his usual appearance, but still carefully understated. His expression was cautious as he entered, clearly reading Elena's tension. "You didn't need to do this," she said without preamble. Gabriel remained standing just inside the doorway. "I disagree. $50,000, Gabriel. Renewable for 3 years. That's not a donation. It's a small fortune." A hint of something crossed his face. Amusement, perhaps. "It's what was needed." "How would you know what's needed?" Elena asked, frustration edging her tone. "You've been in this classroom exactly twice. 3 times now," he corrected mildly. "And I did research. I spoke with Principal Fenton about general classroom funding. I looked into district budget allocations for educational materials across similar schools." The systematic approach surprised her. "Why?" she asked, the single word encompassing multiple questions. Gabriel seemed to consider his response carefully before answering. "Because what you're doing matters. Not just to Maya, though that would be reason enough. You're changing lives with limited resources and unlimited dedication. I'm simply removing one obstacle." "And what do you expect in return?" Elena asked, giving voice to her deeper concern. Gabriel's expression shifted to genuine surprise. "Nothing. That's why it's anonymous." "Nothing is truly anonymous in a town this size," Elena replied. "And nothing comes without expectations, spoken or unspoken." Gabriel was quiet for a moment, studying her with an intensity that made Elena feel somehow seen in ways both uncomfortable and strangely validating. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the student chair nearest her desk. When she nodded, he sat, the adult-sized man looking almost comical in the child-sized furniture. The incongruity somehow made him seem more approachable. "When Isabel was diagnosed," he began, his voice quieter, "we had access to the best medical care available. Private rooms, experimental treatments, specialists flown in from Europe. Money was no object." He paused, looking down at his hands. None of it mattered. "She died anyway, leaving me with a 7-year-old daughter who stopped speaking for nearly 6 months afterward. The raw pain in his voice silenced any response Elena might have offered. What finally reached Maya wasn't expensive therapy or exotic vacations to distract her. It was a public library children's hour in Chicago, where a volunteer reader shared stories with such genuine care that Maya asked for a book of her own that night, the first thing she'd asked for since her mother died. Gabriel looked up, meeting Elena's eyes directly. "I learned something important then. Money can't solve every problem, but it can remove obstacles for people who know how to solve them. You know how to reach these children, how to open doors they don't even know exist. I'm just making sure those doors stay open." The sincerity in his explanation dismantled some of Elena's resistance. Still, questions remained. Why live so modestly if you have these kinds of resources? Why enroll Maya in Westbrook instead of a private school? A hint of a smile touched Gabriel's lips. "You've been trying to figure me out since we met, haven't you?" Elena felt a flush of embarrassment at being so transparent. "You don't fit the patterns I'm used to seeing." "Good," Gabriel replied. "Neither do you." The simple response caught her off guard, as did the genuine admiration in his tone. "After Isabel died," he continued, "I realized how isolated our lifestyle had made us. Gated communities, exclusive schools, social circles based on wealth rather than genuine connection. None of it helped Maya heal, so I made changes. We live simply by choice now, though I maintain my business interests remotely. Maya attends public school because I want her to know different kinds of people, to understand that value isn't measured by possessions." He leaned forward slightly. "The donation isn't about buying influence or creating obligation. It's about allowing someone exceptional to do what they do best without unnecessary limitations." The explanation resonated with Elena more deeply than she wanted to admit. She recognized in Gabriel's words a philosophy that aligned with her own, despite their different circumstances. "I still don't feel comfortable with the amount," she said finally. Gabriel nodded, acknowledging her concern. "What would make you comfortable?" The direct question made Elena consider what truly bothered her about the donation. After a moment she replied, "Transparency, partnership rather than charity, and a scope that extends beyond just my classroom." "Explain," Gabriel prompted. "Westbrook has 16 classrooms, not just mine. All of these children deserve equal resources and opportunities." Elena felt conviction strengthening her voice. "If you want to make a difference here, let's create a program that benefits the entire school, with a committee of teachers determining priorities and allocations." Gabriel's expression shifted to something like respect. "You're redirecting my donation to include others." "I'm suggesting we maximize its impact," Elena corrected. "My students don't exist in isolation. They have siblings in other classes. They move up to new grades each year. Systemic support creates sustainable change." Gabriel was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression that transformed his usually serious face. "This is exactly why I wanted to help you in the first place. You see the bigger picture." "Does that mean you'll consider it?" Elena asked. "I'll do more than consider it," Gabriel replied. "I'll increase the funding to cover all 16 classrooms, with you chairing the allocation committee." The expanded commitment left Elena momentarily speechless. When she found her voice, she asked, "Why do you trust me with this kind of responsibility?" Gabriel's answer came without hesitation. "Because you bought 32 dinosaurs yesterday to make sure one boy didn't feel left out, then created a story about museum gifts so he wouldn't feel like a charity case." He shrugged slightly. "That kind of instinctive compassion can't be taught or bought. It can only be supported." The simple observation, accurate and perceptive, created a moment of connection that transcended their professional relationship. Elena felt seen in a way that few people had ever managed, not just for her actions but for the intentions behind them. "Thank you," she said quietly. Gabriel nodded, understanding that her gratitude encompassed more than just the donation. "Partners, then? In making sure these kids have what they need?" "Partners," Elena agreed, extending her hand. As they shook on their agreement, Elena noticed again the quality of Gabriel's watch against his otherwise modest appearance, the one incongruity he maintained, perhaps as a private reminder of the life he had chosen to step away from. The following weeks brought remarkable changes to Westbrook Elementary. With Gabriel's expanded donation, now structured as the Westbrook Educational Enhancement Fund, Elena assembled a committee of teachers to identify priorities across all grade levels. The first allocations provided basic supplies for every classroom, ensuring that no child lacked essential tools for learning. Elena maintained her regular teaching schedule while coordinating the new initiative, often working late into evenings to manage the administrative aspects of the fund. Gabriel provided guidance on financial structures and legal considerations, meeting with her weekly to review progress and address challenges. These meetings gradually evolved from purely professional discussions to more personal conversations. Elena learned that Gabriel had built a technology company in his 20s, selling it for a substantial fortune before meeting Isabel. Maya's mother had been a children's librarian working on her first manuscript when they met at a literacy fundraiser. In turn, Elena shared stories of her parents, both dedicated teachers who had instilled in her a deep commitment to education as a vehicle for change. She described growing up in classrooms after hours, helping her mother prepare materials and decorate bulletin boards, absorbing the rhythms and rituals of teaching long before she pursued it professionally. As May turned to June, Elena noticed subtle changes in Gabriel beyond their professional collaboration. The careful distance he maintained from other parents began to ease. He volunteered to chaperone the end-of-year field day, manning the water balloon toss station with unexpected enthusiasm. When Maya performed in the spring music program, he sat in the front row filming with his phone, his face alight with paternal pride. The transformation in Maya was even more remarkable. The quiet, watchful child who had arrived mid-year now raised her hand regularly in class discussions, joined the after-school writing club Elena had established with fund resources, and formed genuine friendships with several classmates. Her stories, once focused on solitary characters in fantastical worlds, now featured groups of friends having adventures together. On the last day of school before summer break, Elena distributed report cards and personalized notes to each student. When Maya opened her envelope, she found not only her academic assessment, but also a special commendation for her writing portfolio, which had won honorable mention in the district-wide competition. "Ms. Barrett, look," Maya exclaimed, showing the certificate to her father, who had come to collect her. "My story's got a special award." "That's wonderful, Mija," Gabriel replied, his expression warm with pride. "We should celebrate. Can Ms. Barrett come too?" Maya asked with the direct simplicity of childhood. "She helped me with my stories." The unexpected invitation created a moment of awkward silence. Elena and Gabriel had developed a comfortable working relationship, and perhaps the beginnings of friendship, but they had maintained clear boundaries outside of school-related matters. "I'm sure Ms. Barrett has her own plans for the start of summer," Gabriel began diplomatically. "Actually, I don't," Elena heard herself say. The admission surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise Gabriel. "I'd be honored to celebrate with you, Maya. If your father doesn't mind." Gabriel's expression shifted from surprise to something warmer. "We'd both like that very much." They agreed on dinner that evening at Riverside Park, where the town held its annual summer solstice celebration with food vendors and live music. Elena spent more time than usual preparing for the evening, selecting a sundress she rarely had occasion to wear, and releasing her usually practical ponytail to fall in soft waves around her shoulders. The park bustled with activity when she arrived at 6:30. Families spread blankets on the grass, local musicians played folk songs from a small stage, and the air filled with the mingled scents of various food stalls. Elena spotted Gabriel and Maya near the central fountain, both looking more relaxed than she had ever seen them at school. Maya wore a purple dress with her hair in two neat braids, clutching her writing award certificate carefully in one hand. She saw Elena first, waving enthusiastically and pulling her father in Elena's direction. "Ms. Barrett? You look so different," Maya exclaimed with childish honesty. "You look pretty," Elena laughed, touched by the unfiltered compliment. "Thank you, Maya. So do you. Purple is definitely your color." Gabriel stood slightly behind his daughter, his expression hard to read. He had exchanged his usual button-down for a simple gray t-shirt that somehow made him appear more approachable. "Thank you for joining us," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that extended beyond mere politeness. The evening unfolded with unexpected ease. They sampled offerings from various food stalls, listened to local musicians, and watched Maya play with classmates she encountered throughout the park. During these moments when Maya was occupied elsewhere, Elena and Gabriel's conversation flowed naturally from school matters to books they had enjoyed, films that had moved them, and places they hoped to visit someday. "I never asked what you'll do over the summer," Gabriel said as they sat on a park bench, watching Maya participate in a group game of tag on the lawn. "Do you teach summer school?" Elena shook her head. "Not this year. I usually take a few weeks to visit my aunt in Colorado, then develop curriculum for the coming year." "No vacation? Just more work?" Gabriel's question held no judgment, only curiosity. Elena considered how to explain. "Teaching isn't just what I do, it's who I am in many ways. Planning for next year doesn't feel like work most of the time. It feels like creating possibilities." Gabriel nodded, seeming to understand. Isabel was the same way about her writing. Even when she was exhausted from treatments, she wanted her laptop, wanted to keep working on her manuscript. His voice softened with memory. "She said it wasn't about finishing before she died, it was about living fully until she did." The honest sharing of such a painful memory created an intimate moment between them. Elena felt the significance of his willingness to speak about Isabel without the careful distance he usually maintained. "What happened to her manuscript?" she asked gently. "It's in a drawer in my office," Gabriel replied. "I haven't been able to read it since she died. Maya doesn't even know it exists." "Maybe someday?" Elena suggested. "When Maya is older, it could be a special connection to her mother." Gabriel was quiet for a moment, considering. "You have a gift for seeing beyond the immediate moment," he said finally, "for finding meaning and purpose in painful things." The observation felt deeply personal, as though Gabriel had recognized something essential about her that few others had noticed. Before Elena could respond, Maya returned, breathless from playing. "Papa, they're going to light the floating lantern soon. Can we make one, please?" Gabriel looked to where community members were gathering near the pond, preparing paper lanterns that would carry candles across the water, a town tradition to mark the solstice. "Of course," he agreed, standing and offering a hand to help Elena up from the bench. The simple gesture, casual yet attentive, sent an unexpected warmth through her fingers. They joined the crowd at the water's edge, where volunteers distributed simple paper lanterns and small candles. Gabriel helped Maya fold her lantern carefully, showing patience as she insisted on doing most of it herself. Elena watched their interaction, noting the gentle guidance he provided without taking over, the mark of a parent committed to fostering independence. "You can make a wish when you release it," an elderly volunteer told Maya as she finished her lantern. "What will you wish for?" Elena asked, helping the girl position her candle. Maya considered seriously for a moment. "I can't tell or it won't come true," she replied with the solemn wisdom of childhood. "But it's a good wish." As darkness settled over the park, dozens of lanterns drifted across the pond's surface, their lights reflecting in the water like earthbound stars. Maya's face glowed with wonder as she watched her lantern join the others, her small hand finding Elena's instinctively in the darkness. Gabriel stood close beside them, his presence warm and solid in the gathering night. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, meant only for Elena. "Thank you for being part of this memory." The simple acknowledgement carried weight beyond its words. Elena felt something shift between them, a recognition of connection that transcended their initial roles as teacher and parent. As the evening concluded and families began to disperse, Gabriel walked Elena to her car, Maya skipping ahead with the boundless energy of childhood. "This was lovely," Elena said as they reached her Honda. "Thank you for including me." "It was Maya's idea," Gabriel replied, "but I'm very glad you came." He hesitated, then added, "Perhaps we could continue our conversation sometime, without the professional context." The careful invitation hung between them, not presumptuous but intentional. Elena felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Possibility, opening like the first tentative bloom of spring. "I'd like that," she said simply. Gabriel's smile in response held a warmth that lingered with Elena long after she drove away. The summer months brought a gentle evolution to their relationship. What began as occasional coffee meetings to discuss the educational fund gradually shifted to dinners where the fund was barely mentioned, long walks through the town's historic district, and weekend outings with Maya to nearby attractions. Elena discovered that Gabriel's apparent modesty masked not only his financial resources, but also a brilliant mind that had revolutionized certain aspects of data security technology. He spoke multiple languages, read widely across disciplines, and maintained connections with leading thinkers in various fields, all while living in a modest 3-bedroom house in Millfield and driving a mid-range sedan. In turn, Gabriel seemed genuinely fascinated by Elena's approach to education, her stories of student breakthroughs, and her vision for what schools could become with proper resources and philosophy. He listened attentively to her ideas, asking questions that helped clarify her thinking rather than challenging its validity. Maya flourished in the company of both adults, her natural creativity nurtured by Elena's guidance, and her growing security evidenced in her increasingly confident interactions with others. She began referring to Elena by her first name outside of school settings, a small but significant shift that Gabriel neither encouraged nor discouraged, allowing the relationship to find its natural expression. As August approached, bringing the new school year closer, Elena found herself at a crossroads she hadn't anticipated. Her feelings for Gabriel had deepened beyond friendship, and she sensed a similar evolution in his regard for her. Yet complications remained. She would be Maya's teacher again in the coming year, and the educational fund Gabriel had established created potential conflicts of interest if their relationship became romantic. These considerations weighed on Elena's mind as she joined Gabriel and Maya for a Saturday picnic at the lake outside town. The day was perfect. Clear blue skies, gentle breeze, late summer warmth without excessive heat. Maya alternated between swimming in the designated area and helping Gabriel assemble elaborate sandwiches from the provisions they had brought. As they ate, Maya regaled them with elaborate plans for a story she was developing about a magical lake where wishes came true, but only for people who didn't know they were wishing. "That's a fascinating concept," Elena commented. "How would people make wishes if they didn't know they were wishing?" Maya considered this with characteristic seriousness. They wouldn't say "I wish" out loud. They would just want something really badly in their heart, and the lake would know. "And would the lake grant all wishes?" Gabriel asked, playing along. "Only the ones that would make the person better, not just happier," Maya decided, because sometimes what makes you happy isn't what makes you better. The child's insight, delivered with casual certainty, left both adults momentarily silent. Elena caught Gabriel's eye over Maya's head, sharing a moment of appreciation for the wisdom that sometimes emerged so unexpectedly from this thoughtful child. After lunch, Maya joined a group of children building an elaborate sandcastle near the water's edge, leaving Elena and Gabriel alone on their picnic blanket. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching Maya's focused concentration as she constructed a sand tower. "She's writing more than ever," Gabriel said finally. "3 notebooks filled since summer began. She has stories to tell," Elena replied, "and she feels safe enough now to tell them." Gabriel nodded, his gaze still on his daughter. "I've been reading Isabel's manuscript," he said after a moment, "the one she was working on when she died." The admission surprised Elena. "That's a big step." "It felt like time," Gabriel said simply, "and I realized something important while reading it." "What's that?" He turned to face her directly. "That holding on to grief doesn't honor the person you've lost. Moving forward does." His voice softened. "Isabel would want Maya to have a complete family again, and she would want me to be happy." The implication hung in the air between them, neither rushing to define it further. Elena felt her heart quicken, aware that they stood at the edge of something significant. "The school year starts in 3 weeks, she said finally. "Maya will be in my class again." Gabriel nodded, understanding her concern. "I've been thinking about that, about the complications. Professional boundaries exist for good reasons," Elena continued. "The educational fund already creates potential conflicts. If we were to..." She paused, uncertain how to name what had been growing between them. "If we were to explore what's happening between us?" Gabriel completed her thought. "It would require careful consideration and probably some structural changes." "Structural changes?" Elena asked. "I've spoken with Principal Fenton about modifying the fund administration," Gabriel explained, "creating an independent committee with no direct connection to either of us. And..." He hesitated. "Maya could transfer to Ms. Wilson's 4th grade class. She's an excellent teacher." The fact that Gabriel had already considered these logistics, had thought through the potential complications and identified solutions, touched Elena deeply. It demonstrated both his respect for her professional integrity and his serious consideration of what might develop between them. "You've thought about this a lot," she observed. "I have," Gabriel acknowledged. Because what I feel for you deserves careful thought, not impulsive action. The direct acknowledgement of his feelings created a moment of profound connection. Elena found herself reaching for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I've thought about it too," she admitted. "About you. About us." Gabriel's hand tightened slightly around hers. "And," Elena looked toward the lake, gathering her thoughts. "I've spent most of my adult life giving to others. My students, their families, the community. It's been fulfilling, but..." She paused, finding words for something she had rarely articulated. "Sometimes lonely." Gabriel remained silent, giving her space to continue. "With you, I don't feel like I'm just giving," Elena said finally. "I feel like I'm receiving too. Perspective, understanding, support. It's balanced in a way relationships rarely are for me." A smile touched Gabriel's lips. "That might be the most beautiful way anyone has ever described compatibility." The observation drew a laugh from Elena, releasing some of the tension of the moment. "I'm a teacher. We find educational value in everything." "Including billionaires who pretend to be ordinary working parents?" Gabriel asked, his tone lightly self-deprecating. "Especially those," Elena replied, matching his humor before growing serious again. "Whatever happens between us, Maya's well-being has to remain the priority. Always," Gabriel agreed immediately. "Which is why I wanted to discuss the class transfer with you before mentioning it to her. She adores you as her teacher, but she's also grown attached to you as something more. I think she could understand the distinction if we explained it properly." The care he took with his daughter's emotional needs only deepened Elena's respect for him as a parent. "Let's talk with her together," she suggested. "Be honest about our friendship growing and why that means some changes might be good for everyone." Gabriel nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Thank you for being willing to navigate this complexity. Some things are worth the effort," Elena replied simply. They sat together in comfortable silence, hands still joined, watching Maya direct operations at the increasingly elaborate sandcastle. The moment felt significant, not an ending or beginning, but a conscious choice to explore possibility together. Later that evening, after Maya had fallen asleep in the back seat during the drive home, Gabriel parked outside Elena's apartment building. The night air had cooled, and crickets chirped from the nearby field. "I should get her home to bed," Gabriel said, glancing at his sleeping daughter. Elena nodded, understanding. "Of course." Neither moved immediately, reluctant to end the day. Finally, Gabriel spoke again, his voice quiet in the darkness. "Elena, whatever happens between us, whether we decide to pursue this or determine it's too complicated, I want you to know that meeting you has changed me. Changed both of us, really." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. "How so?" Gabriel considered his answer carefully. "Before Maya started in your class, we were existing, not living. Going through motions, maintaining routines, but not truly connected to anything or anyone." He glanced back at his sleeping daughter. "You didn't just teach her, you showed her how to belong in the world again. And you showed me that genuine care still exists, that people who give themselves completely to others aren't fictional characters in Isabel's stories." The honest assessment of their journey created a moment of profound intimacy. Elena found herself moved beyond words, recognizing the truth in his observation. They had each brought something essential to the other's life. She had offered belonging and purpose. He had provided recognition and support. "Maya's right about her lake story, you know," Elena said finally. "Sometimes the wishes we don't know we're making are the ones that matter most." Gabriel smiled, understanding her meaning. "And sometimes," he added softly, "the universe grants them anyway." In the quiet car, with Maya sleeping peacefully behind them and the future opening before them, they shared their first kiss, gentle, affirming, and full of possibility. As summer transitioned to fall, bringing a new school year with its familiar rhythms and fresh opportunities, Elena found herself reflecting on the unexpected journey of the past year. Maya had indeed transferred to Ms. Wilson's class, allowing Elena and Gabriel to explore their relationship without professional complications. The Educational Fund continued to transform Westbrook Elementary, now administered by an independent committee with Elena serving as a consulting advisor rather than chair. On the first Sunday in October, Elena joined Gabriel and Maya for what had become their traditional weekend hike through the nature preserve outside town. The autumn colors painted the landscape in brilliant golds and reds, and the air carried the crisp scent of falling leaves. Maya ran ahead on the trail, her purple backpack bouncing with each step, stopping occasionally to collect particularly beautiful leaves or interesting stones. She had grown nearly 2 inches since that first day in Elena's classroom, but the purple backpack remained, not the original one Elena had purchased, which had long since worn out, but a new one Gabriel had given her for the new school year. The color remained constant, a thread connecting past and present. "She's writing a new story," Gabriel commented as they walked side by side. "About a teacher who helps children find their special talents." Elena smiled, recognizing the inspiration. "Art imitating life?" "With some magical elements added," Gabriel confirmed. "Apparently this teacher can see colored lights around children that indicate their hidden gifts." "I wish that were true," Elena laughed. "It would make teaching much easier." Gabriel's expression grew thoughtful. "You don't need magic to see the best in people, Elena. It's your natural gift." The observation, delivered with simple certainty, touched her deeply. Ahead of them, Maya had stopped to examine something on the trail, her small figure silhouetted against the brilliant autumn foliage. "I have something for you," Gabriel said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He withdrew a small wrapped package, offering it with uncharacteristic hesitation. "It's not expensive or elaborate, but it has meaning." Elena unwrapped the package carefully to reveal a beautiful leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with a simple tree design. Opening it, she found the first page inscribed with Gabriel's neat handwriting. "For the stories yet to be told, the lives yet to be changed, and the journey we're just beginning. With profound gratitude and love, G." The inscription brought unexpected tears to Elena's eyes. She looked up to find Gabriel watching her with an expression of tender vulnerability. "I thought you might use it to document the impact of the educational fund," he explained. "The real stories behind the numbers, the children whose lives are changing because someone saw their potential and removed the obstacles in their path." The thoughtfulness of the gift, aligned so perfectly with her values and vision, moved Elena deeply. "It's perfect," she said simply. "Thank you." Ahead on the trail, Maya turned back toward them, waving an especially vibrant red leaf she had discovered. "Look what I found," she called. "It's perfect for my collection." As they continued their hike, the three of them moving together through the autumn landscape, Elena reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them to this point. What had begun with a purple backpack purchased from her limited salary had evolved into something profound, not because a parent was a billionaire, but because two people recognized in each other a shared commitment to what truly mattered. The real wealth, Elena realized, had never been about money at all. It was about the capacity to see value where others might not look, to invest in potential others might overlook, and to build connections that transformed lives in ways no financial statement could measure. Maya ran back to them, slipping her small hand into Elena's with the easy affection that had developed between them. On Elena's other side, Gabriel's fingers intertwined with hers, warm and secure. Connected to both of them, Elena felt a sense of rightness, of having found her place in a story still unfolding, one page at a time. In the distance, the path curved through trees aflame with autumn color, leading toward possibilities yet to be discovered. Together they walked forward,